Well, boys, hello. It's time for not original video, and what I mean the Force Gaming channel did a new video about the Elder Scrolls Online, right? This game, and I had my video also like 2 weeks ago. So let's check what this guy is doing. What's this about? Because last video about Black Desert Online from Force Gaming, I mean, was so motivated and motivating. So I started to play BDO. Maybe it's the thing for the Elder Scrolls. And definitely subscribe to this guy. Original videos link isn't on the description, right? Let's go.
Since its release all the way back in 2014, The Elder Scrolls Online has received consistent yearly updates, expanding and adding to the game. This is one of the MMOs that has gotten the steadiest amount of add-ons over the years, which is a big part of the reason I keep coming back to it year after.
Right from the start, I will say the following. I didn't like my experience in 2023. I tried the Elder Scrolls. I played for 8 hours. Yeah, it's not about end game. It's not about the mechanics, etc. I just played the game, and I was like, it was boring. So yeah, don't throw rocks at me. I just didn't like the experience because I mean, it feels a little outdated. But I remember myself when I played it on PS5 like 6 years ago or something. It was fun with the questing and everything. But yeah, let's check it.
After year to check out what's new, because there's pretty much always something new to see. It's also why Bethesda has sponsored today's video. Their most recent
Okay, let's face it, it's sponsored video, and even the name of the video is the same. It was Black Desert Online is Unrecognizable in 2023. Now it's like the Tessa, right? But Chris not doing just the sponsor video, so most likely it will be positive. Well, but let's see what is positive about this game, because Force Gaming, this channel, the guy is doing pretty good research.
Update Necrom came out just the other month, and they asked me to tell you about it, which is just about the easiest and best kind of sponsor that I can think of, honestly. They want me to tell you about a game that I play regularly. Okay, easy enough, so let's do it.
Is he? I don't think so. Let's be honest, I don't think so. But like I said, nevertheless, the video could be good.
I said ESO vastly different today than it was when it released. So what I want to do is catch up to speed on all of the updates. Starting in 2015, about a year after the game launched, we saw the release of the Imperial City update. So this opened up a brand new PvEVP play space. It included the Imperial City districts as well as the sewers. And what was cool about this, it was a new area to farm enemies. You would farm them for this currency that you could change in for gear. But the big thing was the fact that other players from enemy factions were also roaming around, and it was full-on open PvP, which,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I tried it when it launched, and it was fun like for a week or two, and then it became like deserted. It's not like the battleground in World of Warcraft, or it's not like sieges in the Lineage 2 or BDO, right? It's open all the time. And at some point of time, it's the huge map, and you're alone there, like a bunch of other people running. So it was not so fun.
Which meant all of the bedlam and craziness that you expect. You'd go around, you'd be in the fight, you'd have someone jump you, or vice versa. And whenever you killed someone, or if you died, that person could then take that currency. Along with this, they added hours of story content and side quest and 2 all-new group dungeons with both the normal and veteran versions. Also at the same time in 2015, we saw Orsinium.
To be honest, the dungeon part, the quest line part, and everything in this game, it's not something unique. We will talk about the combat system in BDO, which is unique, right? And the quest line here also the best one in the mmorpgs. So hands down, if you like the offline the Elder Scrolls games, right, you will like this as well.
This was a huge new zone with all of the typical new zone points of interest and things to do. There were delves and cities, towns, side quest areas, sky shards to collect, world bosses. This also included, of course, 2 large public dungeons. The public dungeons have always, hands down, been some of the content that I've enjoyed the most because they're open spaces. You're going to see other players running around, but there's also a huge number and density of enemies. They're just large groups of enemies, elites mixed with normal enemies. enemies and tons of different bosses. And then also all of the public dungeons will have their own unique specific like group event inside of it. And if you complete that event, it's going to reward a skill point, which plays into the game's progression. I've always loved the public dungeons, and every time we get new zones with new public dungeons, I just really enjoy that content. Then also here, this is when they added the Maelstrom Arena. So this is basically like a new single player challenge where you fight through these increasingly difficult waves of enemies and bosses for some really good loot. And by really good, I mean the Maelstrom staff has remained as a best in slot weapon for most of my characters for many, many years. It's just a really good item.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Chris played the game for a long time, because I'm following him like for a year, maybe. I remember mostly the New World, so maybe I'm wrong. And I want to say that dungeons, I specifically remember that I want something else from World of Warcraft, because it was many different MMORPGs, but if you want to go to the dungeon, to the raid or something, it's World of Warcraft, and I had tried to find something else. And at that time, I didn't have like powerful PC. It was only PS4, I think. And okay, I opened to myself the Elder Scrolls Online, and I started to play it, and it was fun. It was really fun. All the dungeons are good. I mean, the graphics and the aesthetics, I don't like it. Sorry to say, I don't like the art style of the game, but it looks pretty decent at that time. The dungeons was good. The progression through the story was pretty interesting. It's not like just kill mobs. You do something. This open dungeons also really good. So I had my fun with the game from PvE part.
And there's lots of other good Maelstrom weapons that were added in this update all the way back in 2015, and that carried over for many, many years. I think it might actually still be some best in slot stuff for builds currently as well, although I'm not really up to date on all the high-end best in slot stuff, because that's not really how I play ESO nowadays, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So let's move on to 2016, 2 years after release of the game. We first saw the inclusion of the Thieves Guild, of course this iconic guild from the Elder Scrolls series. With this, you could unlock the Thieves Guild themed skill line, so a brand new skill line focused on giving you various tools for sneaking around, staying.
Yeah, if you don't know how it works in the Elder Scrolls Online, well, first of all, you can see my video. You can watch my video, right? But you have different skill lines, and your archetype at the beginning only give you 3 skill lines or something like that, but then you choose, like you can be vampire, warrior guild, thief guild, like different stuff. And that's why it's really versatile, which is also a big plus of the game.
In the shadows, and of course thievery. So they added pickpocketing to the game, letting you steal items from NPCs that you could then sell to Thieves Guild fences. There was also the bounty system: break a law, get a bounty, pay the bounty, and you go free. They added daily heist missions where they asked you to sneak into specific locations. So these would be like people's homes or warehouses, steal a specific item, get out, collect your reward. And there's also the addition of these Thieves Trove caches spread all throughout the game, throughout all of Tamriel. Then also here with the Thieves Guild update, they added a new 12-player trial. Trials in this game are just sort of like the raid style content.
Yeah.
It's large group, difficult content with good rewards. And what goes hand in hand with the Thieves Guild would of course be the Dark Brotherhood. In 2016, we had the inclusion of this update, allowing you to join the Dark Brotherhood and become a killer for hire. We got the new region of the Gold Coast to explore. They also add a new repeatable quest asking you to take out specific targets. It's like a headhunting sort of thing. And a Dark Brotherhood skill line with a bunch of different abilities. There was this Blade of Woe, which is like an execute skill, letting you instantly take down certain targets. And also they added things like extra move speed and stealth after using Blade of Woe, a reduced aggro radius while mounted, and a few other passive abilities. Then in 2016, we saw Shadows of the Hist. This was a smaller DLC, and these will be spotted throughout.
Before we go further, first of all, he's like everything that he's talking about, it's correct. It's like really like this. And developers, it's a good example of developers. They have so many DLCs through the years, like hands down, they're really trying hard. It's all these DLCs, you need to pay for them, and they still don't have bundles, as I recall right now. So to get all the DLCs and everything that game can offer to you, it's something about $400. But to play, you don't need it. You need just a standard version, like, I don't know, I don't remember, like $10 or something. And the newest DLC, which is like, I don't know, 30, 40, 50. It's a normal game, right? And this is like huge content there. The thing that I wanted to say, it's in his video here, he's showing only the trailers from these DLCs, right? And the bad thing is in the game, it feels and looks not so good like in the trailers. For me, when I tried it like months ago, the worst thing was how outdated feels the movement, the character, the animations. It's okay. It's really okay, and nothing wrong with that. But graphics and movements, etc. If you will play World of Warcraft and how they update it, it's different stuff. So that's why they need to do something with that. It's outdated.
All of these years of updates, this particular one added 2 new Argonian-themed dungeons, and along with those dungeons came some new unique item sets and 2 new monster masks. And monster masks are these special combos. It's like a mask and a shoulder piece. When you have the set, it gives you a really, really cool special bonus. The monster mask set tied to all of these games' dungeons. And then the last thing that happened in 2016, and it was no slouch, this was the One Tamriel update. And this was a pretty big deal at the time, as it marked a major change and overhaul for the game. With One Tamriel, they completely updated all of the open world content, removing level restrictions to zones and enemies, and essentially adding level scaling. So everything scales to the level, everything scales to you, the player, no matter what kind of
It's really good, because sometimes you have like new DLC, and the classics and previous DLC, you don't even go to the zones because you're out level them. And scaling sometimes is bad, but overall I think it's good for repeatable content, and that you will use the content that they created for so many years.
Content you're doing, it's going to be whatever level you are. Personally, enjoy the fact that it does remove that restriction and just lets you approach any content. Basically makes it so that there are no dead zones, there is no dead content, and at least I feel for ESO, it really changed its focus from that sort of vertical progression, the climbing of the ladder of power, and then having zones and enemies tied to that, to a more horizontal progression. And that's how I approach ESO nowadays, although they do have pinnacle stuff to go for and power things to long-term power progression to kind of strive towards. It is very much so horizontal for a majority of the game, especially for the overworld.
Really like
in One Tamriel, they also removed all of the alliance restrictions for grouping. So ESO is a 3-faction game, and initially, once you picked a faction, you were locked into that and you couldn't play with people from other factions. Well, they got rid of that so that you can group and play with people and for your
also
friends who are in different factions, although the PvP does still have that.
Look how cool it looks like in trailers. Maybe I did something wrong. Just try to watch the real gameplay videos. They are not so cool.
A faction war mechanic to it. With the world scaling now, of course, the level...
when you play World of Warcraft, the trailer could be shit, but when you play it and you feel this animation of your character and everything, it feels like more alive, and this vice versa. Now it looks good, and in the game it looks worse. Not like the worst, but a little bit less good than this.
Differences between players also didn't matter. So if you were level 50 and then you had a friend who was level 10 and just started playing, you could still group with them. And both of these changes just made it so that it became easier for people to play together, which I think overall is a good thing. And like I said, this also made it so that all of the open world content remained relevant no matter your level. And that's a feature of the game that I still enjoy to this game. I will have a max level character. I'm not max CP points, but I'm max character level, and I can still go to like starting zones for the various factions, areas that in the original game would have been like level 1 to 10. I can still go. It's still meaningful. I'm still getting XP from killing enemies. I'm still getting loot that's leveled up, and I'm still collecting sky shards. Like it's really good because none of the zones then turn into dead zones, which again, I do appreciate. Other additions with One Tamriel included them adding player dueling to the game. And they also, and this was pretty big, they added ultimates for every weapon skill line. So every single weapon in the game, the two-handed melee, one-handed melee, sword.
So you can feel how they upgrade the game, right? So they're not just like new DLC, like new few skins, but they're doing the game in different ways. And you still can play previous DLC like
shield, the staffs, the destruction and restoration staffs, the bow, every single weapon in the game then also got an ultimate added to it, which just added a bunch more variety of skills and different kind of builds for players to do. And some of those weapon skill line ultimates are pretty darn good. I've used them in various builds that I've had on characters over the years. Okay, so after one Tamriel, we move into 2017. We had a somewhat small update with the Homestead update. This was focused on player housing. You know what player housing is. You buy a house, you get the house, it becomes your home location, and you can decorate it. So they added dozens of homes with all sorts of visual and aesthetic variety and thousands of items for you to customize your space, make it a cozy little home of your liking. There was also the addition of a brand new crafting system that was focused on building furniture. Player housing isn't a particular interest to me personally in MMOs or any game really, but I do know a lot of people really like this system.
Yeah,
and from what I've seen, it's pretty good in ESO. Then we move on to Morrowind, and this was also kind of a big deal because with Morrowind, this was
because it's Morrowind, right? The legendary
was the
location.
Introduction of this new yearly content update structure. So prior to this, every single update was kind of like a standalone DLC add-on. It stood on its own. It was its own thing or a free update. But in 2017 with Morrowind, they basically had a brand new template for updating the game. And that template was every single year, we would be getting one major chapter, which would have a bulk of the new content, as well as a few DLC packs. And these would typically do things like add a couple of new dungeons, add some new storyline content, a few new items and things to collect, and even some new small playables.
So pretty much like many different things during the year, which is really good.
Zones, but the chapter one would be the big one, and a lot of times this would include a large new playable area, and that was the case with the Morrowind chapter. Returning us to Morrowind to explore the island of Vanderfell and return to Vivec City. This was a pretty nostalgic update for a lot of people, myself included, as Morrowind was my first introduction to the Elder Scrolls series, pulling on the nostalgia strings here, and I quite enjoyed it for that reason. This also introduced the brand new class, the Warden. This is like a nature-based magic user with all sort of animal companions. This was and is to this day my favorite class. It is the class that I am still maining right now, basically. I play as a Frost Warden. I've got the Werebear companion. I can command these insects to go swarm enemies, dealing damage over time. I also can summon in this flying cliff racer that swoops down and deals massive single target damage. And then I've got these frost skills like I'll coat the ground.
Yeah, by the way, this is the game. If you don't trust me that the trailers are different, look at that. It feels okay and looks also okay, but it's not comparable to the trailer, right?
With a sheet of ice with my ice destruction staff.
For me, the biggest thing was the lightning and shadows. For some reason, on most of the locations, you don't have a really good shadow, and then you don't have, the tracing. I don't say about ray tracing, but also some reflection, etc. You don't have them, and it looks like, bad textures, like blurry textures, and so lightning will help. But in some places you have it, in trailers you have it, in the game you don't have it.
Staff, I can summon up ice spikes, and then I also invoke this spirit of a bird for a huge boost to movement speed. I just love the class fantasy and theming of the Warden. Again, it's my main today. Warden and Sork are the two that I play, but Warden is the one that I play the most. The Morrowind chapter also
look at that right now. Look at that. Now it looks so good with the shadows and with reflections.
To the game, Battlegrounds, a new
even right now. Look
PvP.
At that. Look at that. Look at the shadows and everything. It looks pretty good with this VFX. But in the game, it's not like that. I don't understand why. If they will do it in the game, or maybe I'm stupid and I can't do it. But even with his footage, it was not
mode,
like
just small scale, 3 teams, 4 versus 4 who will battle in arenas, and we also got a new 12-player trial, again that large group raid style content. After Morrowind came the Horns of Reach. This was a small dungeon DLC, added 2 new dungeons with new items, and then we got the Clockwork City, which added a new zone. It's like a medium to small size zone, but I still think to this day it is one of the more unique and standout zones in Elder Scrolls Online. Just a really unique aesthetic to to it and layout and everything. All of the typical new zone fare as well, including a new story to play through and another 12-player trial. So there was 2 12-player trials added in 2017. Then into 2018, we have the first small DLC was the Dragon Bones. This added 2 new dungeons, and this then moved us into the second major chapter, which was the Summerset chapter. So this added the new zone of Summerset, which is home of the High Elves with all of the suite of new zone stuff. Also the Psijic Order skill line with
Looks
abilities
perfect.
related to...
I mean, you can say that this is the old game, right? But this looks really good.
Time manipulation, like Time Stop, which lets you freeze time in this bubble that you summon up. There's Meditate, where you'll focus to quickly regenerate health and resources. And Undo, which is really cool. This is an ultimate that will rewind time 4 seconds. And what that means in actuality is it takes you back 4 seconds to the health and resources you had, as well as the location that you were in. Summerset also has jewelry crafting, letting us make rings and necklaces, a new 12-player trial. After Summerset, we saw the small DLC of Wolf Hunter, which added 2 new dungeons and items. And then finally, Murkmire added a Murkmire, the new swampy region. This is being the Argonians' homeland. And we also saw the Black Rose Prison, which was a new 4-player arena. Team of people will face off against waves of enemies.
I mean, all these arenas, all these trials, all these dungeons, it's like plenty of content in the game. You have your time, you can do it, or not only storytelling. So the game, I think actually, if I will like play till the end of the game, I mean till the end game, right? And I will try all these PvP arenas, not the huge one, the Cyrodiil, right? But the PvP arenas and like this 4 players dungeon arenas. I will like the game. I think that I will like used to the graphics and things that I don't like, and I will like the game. For some reason, I think like that. I just don't have, motivation and courage to do that. What do you think, guys? In comments, what do you think?
Moving into 2019, the first DLC was the dungeon DLC Wrathstone, added 2 new dungeons, and this was the beginning of 2019's what was then dubbed Season of the Dragon. And 2019 is when they started like basically naming what the year of updates was called. So 2019, Season of the Dragon, big major chapter update was Elsewhere, adding the new zone of Elsewhere, this of course being the Khajiit homeland. This update focused on dragons with tons of dragon-themed locations and content. There would be dragons flying around the zone, and they were sometimes kind enough to land so you could kill them, which this was basically the new public zone event in place of the Dolmen invasions, which are in all of base Elder Scrolls Online. Elsewhere also added the Necromancer class, although I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a ton about this class. It's actually the one class in the game that I have yet to play, but it's a Necromancer. You summon up dead stuff, you surround yourself in bones and blood of dead things, yeah. And then a 12-player trial came in Elsewhere. After Elsewhere, we got new dungeons with the Scalebreaker DLC, and then we got Dragonhold, which added a new medium-sized playable region, story quest, and items. This moves us into 2020. This year of updates was called the Dark Heart of Skyrim. This was themed around parts of Skyrim, with vampires being like the central narrative focus enemy. The Horrorstorm update came first, adding 2 new dungeons. Then we got the big chapter, which was Greymoor, and with Greymoor, we got the new Greymoor Zone, homeland of the Nords. This let us explore parts of Western Skyrim, as well as the underground, the subterranean depths of Blackreach. Really cool location under the basic overland. It added the Antiquities system, which was a new treasure hunting, basically mini game, where you would go out into the world, you'd find these specific locations. Well, actually, first you have to hunt for clues, and then the clues give you the locations for these areas, and then you go to the areas, you scry, which is like this mini game, and then you have to like unearth this stuff, and it lets you collect these items, and then with those items you can get some really super powerful unique gear. Really cool stuff. There's also like cosmetic things and stuff like that, but some of like the best gear in the game comes from this antiquity system through this like treasure hunting. In Greymoor, the public world event was called Horrorstorms, these like supernatural storms that you could partake in. They added a new 12-player trial, of course, and then after that we got Stonethorn, which
of course, yeah. Other developers for other mmorpgs, you will not get any rates or something like that for years. And like they added like how much, like 4 or 3 DLCs a year, like 2 dungeons in each, new zones, and like 3, as I recall, 3 trials, right? So like huge amount of content.
Which added 2 new dungeons, and then Markarth, which added a new playable area, wrapped up the conclusion of that year of stories, and they also added a new solo arena for people to try out. Then in 2021, this was called the Gates of Oblivion year of updates, themed around Daedra. The first DLC, Flames of Ambition, added 2 new dungeons, items, and began the story. Then the big update was called Blackwood. This added the new zone of Blackwood, includes the Imperial City of Leyawiin and the Bogs of Shadowfen. This is also when they introduced the companion system. These are basically just allies that will follow you around and fight alongside you. They also have the new world event of Oblivion portals and a new 12-player trial. After Blackwood, we got the Waking Flame dungeon DLC with 2 new dungeons, and then it all wrapped up with the Deadlands, which brought a new playable area and the conclusion to that year's stories. Then moving on to 2022, this year of updates was the Legacy of the Bretons. As you might guess, it was about the Bretons. The first DLC was Ascending Tide, 2 new dungeons and items. Then we got the new zone and the chapter of High Isle and Amanos. So with this, we got new stuff, new zone, all the new zone things. We got some new companions. They also introduced a brand new system called Tales of Tribute. It's basically like a collectible card game that is within ESO. All sorts of activities to build up your decks, and then you can take your decks and do collectible card game dueling with other people. They added Volcanic Vents. This is the new version of the world events, another 12-player trial. After that was the Lost Depths dungeon DLC with 2 new dungeons, and it all wrapped up with the Fire Song DLC, which added the new zone, the island of...
I mean, listening all of this, I can say that my words about it's outdated and the graphics is not so good. It's like, whatever, man. It's so many different things to do in the game. If all of them are scaled and it's like have value even for the high-level character, and it sounds pretty good. I mean, that it's big thumb up for the developers.
Galen and some new story content to conclude all of that. And that finally brings us to this year, 2023. So this year of updates is called Shadow over Morrowind. Where is it?
By the way, in my video about the Tesla, I did duel the this Necro new class or whatever. It was 2 seconds of the duel, but it was fun.
Well, Morrowind, more or less. So the first one was Scribes of Fate. That was the first DLC, added 2 new dungeons. This entire year of updates is focused on the Daedric Prince of Knowledge, otherwise known as Hermaeus Mora. So the big chapter update that just took place is called Necrom. So with this update, we got 2 new zones. First, we start off by exploring the Telvanni Peninsula. This has got many familiar sights from the world of Morrowind, like the towering mushrooms and many jagged spires. Very Morrowind reminiscent here because it's part of that. We also have and get to explore the city of Necrom, and this is where the Dark Elves honor their dead. And then after progressing the story and playing through the Telvanni Peninsula, we make our way to the Daedric realm of Apocrypha, which is a bit more strange to say the least. We got structures made out of basically entirely piles of stacked books and tomes, things like the Endless Library, lots of fossilized...
Now look at that right now. You can see its shadows here, and it looks like good, right? But whatever is on the light...
objects and bones...
it's just flat. You need to do something with this, and game will be...
all over the place. We got those big swirly crustacean things that I'm sure you remember from science class books when you were a kid. Both zones also have the usual suite of things, tons of side quests, all sorts of delves, the public dungeons, the events, collectibles, shrines, world bosses, and world events. And this new world event system, quite unique in that it's an instanced world event rather than just being something you stumble across. These are called Bastion Mimics, and basically how this works is...
this is the new class that I do.
So you go around collecting these special materials that drop from Seekers. Seekers are like these mini bosses that roam around the zones. I tried doing them solo and they were actually quite difficult. Not impossible, but certainly not the easiest.
As always, please subscribe to my channel and to Chris as well. But please subscribe to my channel. I need to pay for YouTube Premium, please. You know, it's just somewhere there. Just click subscribe and like, you know, and comment, please. Okay.
Sources, you then bring them to these special locations and they let you open a portal into a Bastion Mimic. And basically this is just go through, fight a bunch of different enemies and defeat a boss, a final boss. There's 3 variations to those bosses, I believe. Now being new zones, like I said, they've got delves and dungeons, and Again, these are my favorite kinds of things. So there's a couple of there's 2 new ones in the Telvanni area, and these are fairly familiar looking, basic kind of ESO stuff. Like we've got an egg mine full of Quama, for example. But I gotta say, in Necrom, there are some really cool areas. Specifically, there are some dungeons, or delves as they're called, made entirely out of stacked books, and you're...
What do you think? How many new wardens will be created in Tessa after this video? I think much. I think like many. And I understand why the developers are sponsored these videos. Because the guy, Chris, showing us the best from the game perspective, right? The best what experience you can get. Like for instance, in Black Desert Online, he shows about the combat. He said that the monetization system was changed. He talking about the bad stuff and how it changed, and if it changed, right? And he's talking about the good stuff of the game. And he didn't lie, and he don't lie right now. He just showing the best part of the games. And well, if you like these parts, you can live with the bad ones.
You're basically going through these bridges made.
But for me, just subscribe because I need to, YouTube Premium. Yep.
The books and all the walls and everything, and you got like all sorts of funky looking enemies, like the floating eyes. They even basically have like eye security cameras where they'll be scanning the ground, and if you walk over them, it'll shoot out a beam that will paralyze you if you got hit. There's also this one that's like a ship graveyard with this wreckage that's suspended midair. Some really, really cool areas. And this I talk about this every time I talk about ESO, but exploring delves and public dungeons, some of my favorite content in the game. I just really enjoy it. In Necrom, they also added 2 new companions for you to have fight by your side, and of course a new 12-player trial. And probably the biggest thing besides the new play space and all of that is a brand new class. This is the Arcanist class with access to destructive, restorative, and defensive magic by channeling arcane energies, ancient runes, and lost tomes of power. This is the first class in the game to basically use a combo point system where certain abilities will generate these cruxes that float around your character. The more cruxes you have, the more powerful other certain abilities of yours become. Pretty cool class. You can play it in all 3 main ways with damage dealing, tanking, and healing at your disposal. I personally played as a medium armor stamina build using a 2-handed sword as my primary bar, and then playing with Liam, he actually went with a magicka build using a destruction and restoration staff. Seems like both builds are...
I also think that maybe this game you need to play like from first person point of view. It looks better. I don't know, what do you think, guys? It's look better.
Pretty viable and interesting, especially given that each of the 3 skill lines has a different focus, be it damage dealing, healing, or tanking. I think the class's theme is pretty neat as well.
You can see shit when you play this class, definitely, but maybe with other classes it's more immersive.
With these like channeled beams and firing out tentacles, rune blades, summoning an eye that fires a laser, healing runes, you got a teleport.
Yeah, like with this class now, it's like you don't see a shit.
Gate, just a lot of different cool and interesting new ways to play with the Arcanist class. As of this date, they've already released that dungeon DLC with the 2 new dungeons. They just released the Necrom chapter, and then coming up later this year, they're actually going to be focusing on adding quality of life improvements and bug fixes in Q3. And Q4, they're talking about adding a brand new game system, which is some sort of endless dungeon. I don't believe we've heard all of the specifics yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing more about this. Now, while this is a sponsored video, I've talked about it many, many times over the years. Since before the game launched in 2014, The Elder Scrolls Online has been one of the MMOs that I consistently go back to, especially ESO. You know, a lot of MMOs will get like big updates or big expansions every 2, sometimes every 3 years. ESO gets a sizable chunk of content every single year.
And that's right. Like, this really true. And like developers, guys,
adding new zones, adding new classes, adding new systems. And even if a lot of the zones are like structurally very similar to what the base game is, open area, main story quests, side quests, and then all of those things to do and see in that open world content, I just enjoy going through that. And that is how I typically come back to the game. Like every time I reinstall ESO a couple times a year and I go through and play it, it's basically like, okay, I want to see the new update.
I want graphics like this. If the game will looks like this, I don't know what needs to be changed. I will be honest with you, but it will be good.
I want to check out the new zone, so I'll play through the story, I'll explore the new zone, I'll uncover all those points of interest, go through every delve, do the public dungeons. I don't really bother too much with the vertical progression for the most part. Like, maybe I'll make some progress on going after those super rare chase items, but largely I've got my base set of gear, I've got the build that I like. Maybe I'll level up a new class if there's a new class, which there is in this latest update. I'll do some dungeons and some PvP just for the heck of it. Maybe I'll collect a new gear set, try to get a new monster set of the particular type that I want. But for the most part, I just like going in, checking out the new stuff, and playing for a while. Then after a couple weeks, I usually leave, and I'm pretty happy. And that's exactly what I've done so far. And I've
Exactly. Like, if you talk about this game like that, it's like new content. You go there, you're playing 2 weeks, then you like uninstall the game. Then in like few months, you come back to the game. Maybe this is the approach. Like Asmongold said in some video about World of Warcraft. Don't do the mechanics that will suck all of your time forever. Don't. Just like do the content that you will finish in like months or so. Then you have PvP, like Mystic Dungeons. But the game is ended. Do the same here. Like, you have the new content, you did it. If you want, you will still spend time with your friends, but it's not like you can't reach the end game. It's just stupid. So maybe it's good. Like, what do you think, guys? Should we try on the streams to play Tesso? Because obviously I don't have much experience about the game, and maybe my first 8 hours was, not enough, as always with mmorpgs. What do you think? If many of you will like and, put some comment, let's try it, I will try it and do the few more videos about that, because looks promising.
Still got some more to do, but I've enjoyed Necrom. I'm going to keep on playing through it, and eventually I'll reach the point where I'm happy and I'll put it away until a new big update comes out, and then I'll return to check that out as well. But yes, the Elder Scrolls Online has changed quite a lot since 2014 with all of the updates that it's received over the years, and I still quite enjoy coming to the game and approaching it from that more like casual, horizontal progression. Hey, let me just check out the new thing and do my touristy MMO thing before moving on and then eventually coming back. So yeah, there you go. Thanks once again to Bethesda for sponsoring today's video. If you guys are interested in jumping into ESO and checking out the latest Necrom update, do me a favor and go ahead and click on that link in the description below. And that pretty much does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this overview of the changes and major updates to Elder Scrolls Online and a little highlight of their most recent Necrom update. That's going to do it for today, though. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
We will see you, Chris. And HBO Max. So I really like to watch videos from Chris. Like he doing the really perfect research. You can hear about the game, all the good things. He didn't talk about PvP. For me, it's the sign that PvP is shit. Because if you will talked about Guild Wars 2, something games like that, or BDO, every time PvP. And he didn't talk about PvP in Tesso. So I like PvP. It's like shame that they don't have good ones. But maybe I'm wrong. So put the comment below, and I was happy to see you. It was great video, and let's wait for another ones from Chris, and of course from myself. Check the channel, check everything. I just was happy to, that you spent some time with me, and see you in the next one.